Chapter 5. The relationships of a man, iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. Proverbs 27 verse 17, friendship is one of the most valuable gifts we have in life, yet is often the most misunderstood and underappreciated. For many men, deep and meaningful friendships are few and far between. We often assume that we don't need close relationships beyond our immediate family, or we're led to believe that independence and self-sufficiency are the markers of a strong man. This couldn't be further from the truth. The Bible speaks often about the importance of friendship, accountability, and community. It emphasizes that we are not meant to live life alone, especially as we grow into the men God has called us to be. As Proverbs 27 verse 17 reminds us, iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. This verse paints a picture of friendship, not just as a means of companionship, but as a vital process of mutual growth. Just as iron becomes sharper when rubbed against another piece of iron, men become better when they engage in genuine, honest relationships that challenge them, build them up, and hold them accountable. However, forming these kinds of friendships doesn't come without its challenges. For much of my life, I struggled with building and maintaining deep friendships. Growing up, I often found myself in new towns and new churches as my father pastored in various locations throughout the Midwest. As a result, I became good at making short-term connections, but I didn't know how to build long-lasting relationships. I developed what I jokingly call the gift of short-term friendship. Although I say that with plenty of sarcasm, it was difficult for me to open up and be vulnerable when I knew we'd be moving again in a few years. And that pattern followed me into adulthood. But something changed during my time in Bible college, where I met Augie, one of my first true friends. Meeting Augie wasn't just a matter of coincidence. It was a turning point in my life, where I began to understand the value of real friendship and accountability. Augie was rough around the edges when he first arrived at Bible college. He had experienced a lot of hardship in his life, from substance abuse to homelessness, and his journey to faith was dramatic. The moment he became a Christian, he was thrust into Bible college by his well-meaning family, and he landed in my dorm room as my roommate. It was a providential arrangement because, as it turned out, Augie and I needed each other more than we realized. At first, I wasn't sure what to make of him. His past was so different from mine, and we seemed like an odd pair. But through long conversations late into the night, we developed a bond that was deeper than surface-level friendship. Augie had a way of cutting through the noise and being brutally honest. He wasn't polished or careful with his words, but that's what made him such a good friend. He always told me the truth, whether I wanted to hear it or not. He had this ability to see through my defenses, and I knew that I could trust him with anything. Our friendship became a space where I could be vulnerable, and Augie could do the same. We talked about our faith, our struggles, our dreams, and our fears. Over time, I began to realize that this kind of friendship was what I had been missing all along. Augie wasn't afraid to hold me accountable, to ask me the hard questions, and to confront me when necessary. But he also supported me, encouraged me, and built me up when I needed it most. He became like a brother to me, and I had the honor of asking him to be the best man at my wedding. Building healthy friendships don't just happen by chance. They require effort, intentionality, and most of all, vulnerability. For many years, I believed that friendships were something that would naturally form over time, without much effort on my part. I assumed that if I spent enough time with someone, a friendship would develop. But real, meaningful friendships go much deeper than that. Building a healthy friendship requires a willingness to open up, to let someone else into your life, and to be vulnerable about your struggles and weaknesses. As men, we often hesitate to do this. We're conditioned to believe that we need to be strong, independent, and self-reliant. We're taught to keep our emotions in check, to man up, and to never show vulnerability. But this mindset prevents us from forming the deep, meaningful relationships that God intended for us to have. In my early years, I struggled with vulnerability. I didn't want people to see the parts of me that were messy or imperfect. I wanted to present a strong front, to be the guy who had it all together. But as I learned through my friendship with Augie, real friendship can't happen unless we're willing to be honest and open about who we are. Augie wasn't perfect, and neither was I, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that we were honest with each other. We were willing to share our struggles, our doubts, and our failures. In doing so, we built a friendship that sharpened us both. Healthy friendships are built on trust, respect, and mutual support. They're not just about having someone to hang out with or watch the game with. They're about having someone who will challenge you, encourage you, and walk with you through the ups and downs of life. As I've grown older, I've come to realize that these kinds of friendships are rare and precious, and they require intentional effort to maintain. You are who you hang around is a popular saying. Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future. This phrase holds a lot of truth. The people we surround ourselves with have a profound impact on who we become. Whether we realize it or not, we are influenced by the attitudes, behaviors, and values of those closest to us. This is why it's so important to choose our friends wisely. In my friendship with Augie, I saw firsthand the impact that the right kind of friendship can have on your life. Augie was someone who challenged me to be better. He didn't let me settle for mediocrity or make excuses for my mistakes. He held me accountable, and I did the same for him. In that way, our friendship became a source of mutual growth. But I've also experienced the other side of this principle. There were seasons in my life when I surrounded myself with people who weren't pushing me toward growth. They were content with mediocrity, and their lack of ambition and direction began to rub off on me. It became easy to drift, to lose focus on my goals and calling, and to adopt a more passive attitude toward life. This is the danger of surrounding yourself with the wrong people. They can subtly influence you in ways that pull you away from God's purpose for your life. Proverbs 13 verse 20 says, "Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm." This verse is a powerful reminder that the people we choose to walk with will either lead us toward wisdom and growth or toward harm and stagnation. If we surround ourselves with people who are pursuing God's best for their lives, we will be encouraged to do the same. But if we spend time with people who are content with complacency or who live contrary to God's will, it will be much harder for us to stay on the right path. This doesn't mean that we should isolate ourselves from people who are struggling or who are far from God. Jesus himself spent time with sinners and outcasts, loving them and pointing them to the truth. But we must be intentional about who we allow to influence us. We need friendships that sharpen us, that challenge us, and that help us grow in our faith. These are the friendships that will shape our future and help us become the men God has called us to be. Navigating conflict in relationships. Conflict is inevitable in any relationship, whether it's a friendship, a marriage, or a professional relationship. No matter how close we are to someone, there will be times when we disagree, misunderstand each other, or hurt one another. But how we handle conflict can either strengthen the relationship or tear it apart. In my friendship with Augie, we faced our share of disagreements and conflicts. We were both strong-willed and opinionated, and there were times when we didn't see eye to eye. But what made our friendship strong was the way we handled those conflicts. Instead of avoiding the issues or letting them fester, we addressed them head-on. We didn't let small disagreements turn into bigger problems. We had honest conversations, even when they were uncomfortable, and we were always willing to listen to each other's perspective. Proverbs 15 verse 1 says, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but harsh words stirs up anger." This verse highlights the importance of how we respond to conflict. It's easy to react out of frustration or anger, but that only escalates the situation. When we approach conflict with humility, a willingness to listen, and a desire for resolution, we create an environment where healing and growth can take place. One of the most important lessons I've learned about conflict is that it doesn't have to be destructive. In fact, conflict can be an opportunity for growth, both personally and relationally, if we approach it in the right way. Conflict gives us a chance to practice humility, to learn from our mistakes, and to deepen our understanding of the other person. In my friendship with Augie, we learned to navigate conflict with grace. We didn't shy away from the tough conversations, but we always approached them with a desire for resolution, not victory. We weren't trying to win the argument. We were trying to understand each other and strengthen our friendship. Another crucial element of navigating conflict is forgiveness. No relationship can survive without forgiveness, because we all make mistakes. If we hold on to grudges or let bitterness take root, it will eventually destroy the relationship. But when we choose to forgive, we open the door to reconciliation and healing. Being a leader in relationships as men, we are called to be leaders, not just in our homes and workplaces, but also in our relationships. Being a leader in relationships doesn't mean being the one in control or always taking charge. It means being intentional about the health and direction of the relationship. It means being the one who initiates, who encourages, and who sets the tone for growth and accountability. In my friendship with Augie, there were times when I had to take the lead and encourage him in his walk with God. And there were times when Augie had to lead me, challenging me to grow in areas where I was struggling. Leadership in relationships is a two-way street. It's not about one person always being in charge. It's about both people taking responsibility for the growth and health of the relationship. One of the most important aspects of leadership in relationships is servant leadership. In John 13, verses 14 to 15, Jesus gives us the perfect example of leadership when he washes his disciples' feet. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example, that you also should do just as I have done to you. Jesus, the Son of God, took on the role of servant and washed his disciples' feet, showing them that true leadership is rooted in humility and service. In our relationships, we are called to follow this example. We are called to serve one another, to put the needs of others above our own, and to lead with humility. In my relationships with other men, I've learned that being a leader means being willing to have the hard conversations, to ask the tough questions, and to challenge each other to grow. It also means being willing to serve, to listen, and to support each other through the ups and downs of life. Understanding and respecting boundaries are an essential part of any healthy relationship. Without boundaries, relationships can become imbalanced, and we may end up feeling overwhelmed or taken advantage of. Boundaries aren't about keeping people at a distance. They're about creating a framework for trust, respect, and mutual understanding. Early on in my friendship with Augie, we developed a mutual understanding of each other's boundaries. There were certain topics or issues that we knew required sensitivity, and we respected that space. Boundaries allowed us to be honest and open with each other, while also maintaining a sense of respect and consideration. In any relationship, it's important to communicate clearly about boundaries. This might involve setting limits on how much time you spend together, how you handle conflict, or how much emotional support you can provide. Healthy boundaries ensure that both people feel valued and respected, and they help prevent misunderstandings and resentment. Proverbs 25, verse 17 offers practical wisdom in this area. Let your foot be seldom in your neighbor's house, lest he have his fill of you and hate you. This verse reminds us that even in close relationships, there needs to be a balance of presence and space. Too much time together without boundaries can lead to irritation and conflict, but with healthy boundaries in place, relationships can thrive. Over the years, I've learned that respecting boundaries is not only important for maintaining healthy relationships, but also for protecting our own emotional and spiritual well-being. When we set clear boundaries, we create space for honesty, trust, and growth. Being accountable to others' accountability is one of the most powerful tools we have for growth, and it's a vital part of any strong relationship. In my friendship with Augie, accountability was at the core of our relationship. We held each other to a higher standard, both spiritually and personally. If one of us was slipping in an area of our lives, the other would step in, not with judgment, but with love and concern. Accountability isn't about shaming or criticizing someone when they mess up. It's about walking alongside each other, encouraging each other, and challenging each other to grow. In James 5, verse 16, we are reminded of the power of accountability. Therefore, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person has great power as it is working. There is healing and growth that comes when we are willing to be honest about our struggles and hold each other accountable. In my relationships with other men, accountability has been a game changer. It's helped me stay focused on my walk with God, and it's challenged me to grow in areas where I've been complacent. Having someone who is willing to ask the tough questions, to call me out when I'm off track, and to pray for me has made all the difference in my spiritual journey. If we want to grow into the men God has called us to be, we need to invite accountability into our lives. We need friends who will hold us to a higher standard, who will encourage us to keep pursuing God's best, and who will walk with us through the ups and downs of life. The sharpening power of relationships as men We were never meant to do life alone. We were created for community, for relationships that sharpen us and help us grow. My friendship with Augie was a turning point in my life, a relationship that taught me the value of vulnerability, accountability, and intentionality. Through that friendship and through the other relationships I've built over the years, I've become a better man, husband, father, and leader. Proverbs 27 verse 17 reminds us that just as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. We need each other. We need friendships that challenge us, encourage us, and hold us accountable. These are the relationships that will help us grow into the men God has called us to be. As you reflect on your own relationships, I encourage you to seek out friendships that sharpen you. Be intentional about building connections with other men who will challenge you to grow, who will encourage you in your faith, and who will hold you accountable. And as you invest in these relationships, remember that you, too, have the opportunity to sharpen and encourage the people around you.